well, how do I optimize? I go to somebody and bankruptcy and everything else. That's a concern. It's a different kind of value. But I'm more optimistic than you are because there are so many bright young people. There are going to be some of these problems, and a lot of the companies with the credit cards and everything else are going to figure out how to mathematically, manage that. But the bankruptcies that have happened, I think with the 2007 to 2009 situations, many people who may have overspent didn't mind the government bailing them out at all. And I think prior generations have become less common. So that is a concern.
But that's all of us. We are the ones that bailed them out.
That's right. That's right.
They know, and they know it, and they don't care.
They don't care. And that's the idea of national resolve, A lot of folks that way, and that is a big problem. Yes, sir.
On a practical note, for myself anyhow, I just retired from here 4 months ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And the one piece of wisdom is I have a significantly younger wife, and I'm keeping her in the job market.
Are you an alum from here?
I'm not an alum, but I've worked here for 30 years.
Well, you got all that education.
Yeah.
You figured that all out.
Anyhow, my question is, it had to do with your advice to get objective advice on your assets to guard them. And I have been at different presentations. Yours, TIAA, CREF gave one over at Saddlebrook not long ago that I attended. And it's really complex. Everything you showed us, everything they showed us. And obviously I need help from an advisor, a financial advisor. What are the kind of questions I should ask of an advisor that would help me judge that he is a good objective advisor?
Well, that's a long answer, so I'll try not to do that because of the time. And
I understand.
We talked separately about it. I think, one, if somebody has a conflict of interest, they're selling products, it influences, there's some great people out there, I think it influences what they try to get you to do. So if somebody has a real benefit that comes from what you select, you have to decide if you have enough trust in them to overcome it. But for years, we have people who've come into our firm who went there, and the type of things that we see are annuities, limited partnerships, certain life insurance contracts, all the high commission stuff. It's like they look at this stuff, how do I make the most money out of these 4 products, and I'll give you one of those 4. That is one concern. It doesn't have to be that complicated. For example, like TIA CREF is fairly objective. They may be good or bad in what they tell you, but I don't think it's terribly biased. If you're a member there. Right?
Yeah, they weren't trying to sell us anything.
That's what I mean. And again, you have to judge the person's capabilities, but I don't think there's the lack of objectivity. If you decide on a strategy, and let me just use 50% in the market, 50% out, it could be 80% out, whatever it is, you could get an S&P index fund through a Vanguard or something like that, which is going to be the average in a market. A lot of times, I don't know if it's true at St. Leo, but somebody say in high school, he or she's only an average student. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you?
Okay.
You're okay? You think? Anyone mean anything else to anybody else?
But not very good.
Not very good. If you had 500 students, they're not number 250, probably. They're probably number 400 or 500. An S&P index fund is average. About half will do better and half will do worse. Average isn't bad. So if you said I want to be 50% in the market, you could have an S&P index fund, an emerging growth fund at a smaller amount, and then have a short-term, high-quality bond fund and CDs and whatever the other 50%. You could do a lot of that yourself. And if it's an index fund, average isn't so bad, but it really is average. It's not, average means that somebody really is way below average. And you don't need a lot of advice to do that, but the key is, what's the risk tolerance? And many people end up getting, if people come in, they think they're very careful and conservative. We take their balance sheet, we add it up, and when you throw in, if they're an executive, we deal with a lot of executives, the stock they have in the company they work for, and the options after taxes, and their mix, and their 401k, and the other investments, often they're shocked. They could be 90% in the market. They thought they were less than 50. And these are very bright people. They're busy. And they just haven't put it together. Some of you asked about real estate investments. If you're doing real estate investments that are investments, that counts. That's an investment. Could be a great investment. Could be a horrible investment, but it's less liquid. We would put that in our more aggressive category. It counts if it's for investment purposes. You don't just, ignore it because it happens to be real estate versus a stock or bond. So the first step is to try to figure out, with whatever advice a financial planner, could be a CPA, try to help you figure out, both of you, what you would want to do in terms of risk. Being disciplined, staying there. If you get anxious about the market, make it less aggressive. Don't get more aggressive. Stay within that confine. Now, what your neighbors do doesn't make any difference. And you can use some of these index funds without getting a lot of advice. Or you could spend the dollars and get it from somebody who you trust and feels objective. I mean, you could take the simpler approach. Not so bad. But you have to set the strategy. And because it's an index fund doesn't mean it couldn't go down 20, 30, 40% if the market goes down. Or up. This year would be terrific. 2007, 8, 9 would have been horrible. So that you don't have to make it complicated, and you could err on the conservative side. That's not a very thorough answer, but
no, I am. And actually, I'm happy I've just been here because it was obvious that there are some smarter people in this room that are, and some of them were retiring, and a few of us are actually kind of working together on at least dealing with some of the initial things that are going on in the economy and Medicare and Blue Cross and all that kind of stuff. So actually, we can help each other, I think.
You can, and there are things to optimize with tax efficiencies that are totally legal, ethical, and whatever. Areas of insurance. For any of you, if you have assets, you need to have umbrella liability policy. The agents don't tell you much about them because they're not very expensive and you're not likely to have a claim. But if you happen to have a vehicle and you happen to have a mishap, you could lose everything almost that you have. There's some qualified plans on it. Insurance is, you don't want to ever have an insurance claim. You want the insurance company to get wealthy because you don't have a claim. But $125, $150 a year, depending on the carrier, will get you $1 million of coverage. Most of our clients have 5 or 10 million. You have to cover things that you can't afford. And if the insurance company makes a fortune on you, you want that. You don't want to ever have a, not because they didn't pay you for a claim, you didn't have a claim. And how do you get advice on those things when you have accumulated over the years all these funds? This world, something crazy happens, and cars would be the most prevalent, but it could be other things. And that's where getting somebody who you can trust to go through these things, it's not economic. An insurance agent, if they make 20% on $125, that's not going to make their day financially. And they wouldn't be necessarily as attuned to that. So you've got to look at the health insurance, and you've got to look at auto and homeowners and will structures and gifting, whether you're doing it for family or universities. If anyone has separate questions, I mean, I'm so grateful to Art for what he's done for Bobby and me and our firm over so many years. I'm more than happy to provide anything. You're looking at grants and CRUTs and other kinds of things that might be ways of recognizing what's been done here with the team at St. Leo. Be happy to offer you math and how to go about looking at that as well. Appreciated stock. Our clients, if you have appreciated stock, we do it. We write the letter. People just sign them. And if you have appreciated stock that you might sell, let's say you had a $10,000 stock and it cost you $2,000, great with it. If you sell it, you'd have $8,000 of gain. You don't have an income tax here in Florida, you're so fortunate. But you pay 20% or 23.8%, almost a quarter of it, almost $2,000 in taxes. If you're going to give a $10,000 contribution, not because you have the stock, but as part of your gifting to your church, to your university, gift it to them, you get a full deduction and you have no capital gain. But you don't do it just because you have it, you replace cash contributions. And there are things like that where people can help, which are perfectly legal, they're in the law, they're not gimmicks, and it's important to take advantage of those. There are so many opportunities out there. People have 403Bs, 401Ks, FSAs, HRAs. There are so many, and HSAs. There are so many vehicles that made it very complicated, unfortunately. But there are opportunities to benefit. But investment strategy should be risk-adjusted and disciplined, in my view. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It could be, and you might get benefit, but you might not. You can do it on a simpler fashion. Are there any other questions? I'm going to get a hook here because of time, but if people do, yes, ma'am.
Not to put you on the spot, but would you be willing to share your PowerPoint presentation with us?
Of course. If anyone, I have a few copies that Marcia, our secretary, is a gem, and Jeannie over here has been working with something. I mean, everybody I've met here, it's amazing. I mean, just watching the students and everything, I'm smitten. So yeah, if anyone wants a copy, I do have some over here if you'd like. Yes, ma'am.
I warned you that we might have a question from our viewer from New York, and this is a specific question. He's asking, what is the better bet? Hold debt-free real estate and bet on appreciation, or liquidate and reinvest elsewhere?
Well, one, I don't have a good answer because it depends on the real estate market, but you would categorize the real estate as an investment in the aggressive category because of liquidity. You want to make sure one of the factors is diversification. And we come across this a lot. Somebody's an executive with XYZ company. They have stock that and some of them, if they're senior officers, they don't want to be selling because it doesn't look so good. And they could have huge amounts of that stock. If somebody has a huge percentage of their assets tied in with real estate, that ought to be a factor. For those of you who have benefited from all the appreciation that happened for decades, you may have a desire and feel you have knowledge of real estate. If I may, I'll give a quick story to remind it. During the 1980s and early 90s, every year we would get some number of phone calls. And we have clients who happened to be in Florida. Sometimes Arizona, but it was Florida. He said, have we seen a great investment? It wasn't the first time we heard it. We probably heard it 2 weeks before. And we want to go buy this place, and we're going to rent it out, and it's going to be terrific. Our role, we're not mom and dad. We're to help them, right? We're not trying to say, no, you shouldn't. What do I know about that? We put a math model together, okay? So we got what the purchase price was, what the maintenance was, the insurance. We had the rental rate and how much the management company took and the vacancy, occupancy rates. And we ran the numbers. And every time we did, I asked people, it's funny, I went to a school that was very analytical at the University of Chicago, and the cost of capital was one of those big deals that people, theorists and researchers talk about all the time. So you go to one of the most theoretical schools in the country, and we had a lecture on the cost of capital, where a lot of this was developed at the university. And the funniest thing I remember is going to the class, and they had a guest lecturer who came in, he was from Montgomery Ward, and he said the cost of capital, according to Miller and Modigliani, they were Chicago professors, is 10%. And he said, next topic. And I thought we were going to have 3 days of theory. That was it. That's all he said. And to me, it was very funny. You guys may not think so, but it wasn't that in that context. So
at the University of Chicago, that's a joke.
It was very funny to some of us who want to sit in that lecture. However, if I ask people what kind of rate of return did you want to make after taxes, and this was in the 80s and early 90s, guess what number they used? Huh? 10%! Isn't that amazing? And it never worked. Their numbers. So they say, well, it's a bad investment. I said, maybe not. Let's look over the numbers. What kind of mortgage rate? Maybe we can tweak this. What kind of occupancy? Maybe we can tweak that. And then they said, well, it doesn't work. We shouldn't do it. Again, our job's not to talk them out of it. We go through detailed cash flow studies. And the question then became, and this is different than what you would ask for the person in New York, because they're not living there. But the point was, we said, okay,